25 close to London, and a little bit cooler and still feeling quite chilly with that strong westerly breeze across northwest Scotland. Then through the afternoon, we're going to see plenty of sunshine around, particularly for eastern Scotland. There should be lots of sunny spells here, but it will be feeling cool. Temperatures only into the mid-teens across western parts of Scotland, and with that breeze, it still will be feeling quite cool, especially over higher ground. Northern Ireland seeing a brighter afternoon and evening than yesterday, and there'll be plenty of sunshine across the board, and most places across the southern half of the UK will be dry through Sunday evening as well. So turning into clear spells overnight, and that'll be for much of the country, lots of clear skies. But we do start to see this frontal system arriving from the west, cloud beginning to push in, particularly for Northern Ireland, Scotland, and into parts of the West Country and Wales, starting to see some drizzly conditions moving in for Monday morning. Cooler though ahead of this, temperatures only just holding up into double figures, and quite cool in the countryside, likely to be into the single figures here as well. But a dry and bright start across the east of the country, very much an east-west split through Monday, and we're going to start to see thickening cloud arriving from the west, strengthening wind, particularly through the Irish Sea, where we could see gales by the time we get into the afternoon, and we'll see some strong winds and some heavy rain here too. Cool underneath that rain, but there still will be some warmth in that sunshine the further south you are.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One local cricket team was made up entirely of one family, the Jollans.
The Newmarket midweek seconds played Thurlow and Old Mill Greenian seconds, captained by, here we go, James Jolland. He played alongside family members Henry, Freddie, George, Jack, Archie, Ryan, Brandon and Daniel. Even if slightly controversial, one of the umpires was a Jolland to Stephen the umpire.
Yes, well, the Jolland family mostly live in Wickenbrook in Suffolk and have played for 4 years, but Dullingham Village team before it merged with Newmarket. So that's the entire backstory. We're delighted to be joined now by Captain James Jolland and teammate and brother Nick Jolland. Really good to see you both this morning. This is incredible. How did you get the entire family involved in cricket?
Well, we started the club about 3 years ago, and it was more friends and family. But then it had this opportunity of this week to get everyone involved, because everyone was back and they all played cricket, various levels, and the youngest being 12, George, and we're all available. So we thought 1 week we'd do the whole team.
You booted the friends out for 1 week only?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They come and watched. They supported us.
How did the other team feel about having an umpire with related ties?
Well, the captain of the Thurlow is one of our friends. We do know him, so he was fine with it, and there was no controversial decisions at all.
I think it's a fantastic strategy.
No, yeah.
You could plant somebody.
That's the way
in a position of authority. It's a great idea.
Oh, look, here's the scorecard we can see on the screen with all of your names on there. Some fantastic English names on there. How does it get between the family members? Is it very, very competitive between you all?
As you get older, you work on that, don't you? And you keep that competitiveness out of it. And it's really for to play with your sons. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely
We've
thing
all
to
got
do.
sons in it. That's why we do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. While Camilla is on a well-earned break, it's been a week full of strike announcements. Labour's been played by its union paymasters, according to the new Shadow Home Secretary, James Cleverly. So is the government dealing well with the pressure from the unions? Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, will be here to share what he thinks on this. Plus, after a week of tens of thousands of A-level students, they've found out whether they're going to university. I'll be speaking to former Minister of State for School Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education, Robert Halsall, about why he thinks his party was wrong to insult those doing Mickey Mouse degrees. I'll be joined too by Alan Halsall, who Dominic Cummings claims played a critical role in securing Brexit, and that if he had not acted as the official responsible in electoral law for vote leave, then the pro-Brexit campaign may well have been lost. Defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, will be here too with the latest developments in the Middle East and the Ukraine-Russian war. And England's largest independent flower show is taking place this weekend in Southport's Victoria Park as it celebrates a centenary year. It's hoped the flower show will be given a much-needed boost for the seaside town following the tragic stabbing of 3 girls just 3 weeks ago. I'll be joined by that show's director, Alan Adams. We've got 90 minutes of punchy politics lined up for you this morning, so please don't go anywhere and stay tuned. Right, to go through the papers this morning, I'm joined by James Price, a former senior government special advisor, who I'd like to congratulate James on getting engaged this weekend.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you for having me.
James, great to have you here. What's your first story in the papers?
So I think we'll start with the Mail on Sunday front page. It says £14 billion bill for Keir's shabby union cave-in.
Is that fair? Is that a cave-in?
I think it's more than fair. I mean, I think this idea that the trade unions are secretly the people who control the Labour Party. It's not their voters, it's not the people out in the country, it's people secretly running the trade unions who've bankrolled the Labour Party since its inception. Blair managed to do a very good job historically of making that not be the case.
Yep.
You know, seeming to actually represent the whole country and care about these things and stand down the unions. But most other Labour leaders seems to fall to it. And the bit that is most stupid, I think, for this is that they thought, when the grown-ups, aka the Labour Party, when they come into government, all this industrial action will all go away, whether it's the GPs, whether it's other bits of the NHS, the junior doctors, whether it's train drivers, all that will be sensible, will listen to their very reasonable demands, will come to a sensible compromise and so on. That hasn't happened. They've given them everything they want. And what has gone on instead? So we've lost this £14 billion, this huge, great fiscal black hole that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is fibbing, basically, and saying this is all the Tories' fault. It's not. And they have done this thinking it will end all the strikes. What's actually going to happen? No, the strikes are going to continue anyway. They've been played by the unions. They
may do. Now, we say that, don't we? Because as left, the train drivers getting 14%, GPs 11%, junior doctors 22%. We hear, don't we, reports from the PCS at the border in Heathrow. They might be striking too. So there's lots of... And the point is there's no strings attached by all accounts. So there's no demands for productivity, which the Tories were asking for.
Absolutely right. This is the problem. You can't just go asking for above-inflation pay increases if you're not going to do anything to make that worthwhile. We perfectly understand that there are lots and lots of decent people who work in these sectors, most of them, almost all of them in fact, they do decent, important, necessary work. No one's saying that's not true. But at a time when, frankly, we've got to get real that the United Kingdom is just not a very rich country anymore, right? We're just not. We haven't had significant growth, and that's been the problem of both parties. The Tories haven't encouraged it enough either. We haven't had enough growth to justify these kinds of things and all the spending. And, of course, think about it strategically. As Roger Kipling once said, if you pay the Dane Geld, you'll never get rid of the Dane. You give them all the money they want, you give them all this stuff, they're just going to come back and ask for more.
There's a piece also in the Sun newspaper saying that the public purse is being used like a union cash point. Yeah, it can be seen that way, can't it? That's a problem that the Labour's got. Spending money is always easy in government, as you know, your time in the Tory government, but saving it is much harder.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think it's very difficult to get on public day-to-day spending. That's very difficult because that gets baked in forever and ever and ever. It's easier to get money in for kind of capital infrastructure projects, right? Whether it's roads and bridges and things like that, things that last. You can make better arguments. It's easier to work out where the return on that money goes. The problem is, frankly, that you've got 2,000 very smart people in the Treasury who basically control everything. And they have to say no to a lot of stupid stuff that other departments ask for. Fair enough, that's an important thing for them to do.
Yeah.
But they also then stop other useful things from happening as well. And that's the difficulty we've got here. There's kind of tension in the heart of government.
And, James, politics is about choices and how you spend limited resources. Let's look at the Express, Sunday Express, page 1. How many OAPs will freeze this winter? There's a choice being made here, isn't there?
It's shocking. It's a great headline from the Express, and this idea of saying how many people will die. Obviously, it's meant to be so relevant. Hopefully, the answer will be 0. I guess the problem is with the winter fuel allowance. This may not make me wholly popular, but that it would going out to absolutely everybody. So it would go to people who would be at risk of freezing if they didn't have it, and it was going to multimillionaires and billionaires and people like that. Now, we means test lots of benefits in lots of other ways. And so if the case that most OAPs are going to need this, then they'll mostly get it anyway, because if we move to a system where if you need it, you'll get it. If not, then they're not going to save any money anyway. And this is Labour's problem. They keep saying we're going to save money with things that aren't actually going to save
This article
money.
in Express talks about a report revealing the devastating impact of axing the winter fuel allowance. How many OAPs will freeze this winter? Is that over the top? Do you think we might have some freezing OAPs this winter while public sector workers enjoy their pay rise?
I'm definitely going to hope that none do. I'm sure we all do. But again, this, as you said, this is about choices. And this is why it's always so dangerous when we start bringing, the Labour Party start bringing in, oh, we're going to save this money here, we're not doing it there. It doesn't work like that. It's very easy when you're in opposition to just say these kinds of things and try and go for these nice headlines. Now they're in government and it's coming back at them. They go, no, but we're the good people. We're not going to do the bad thing, are we? It doesn't work like that.
Talking of saving money, The Observer, page 1, it's time to end blame culture over benefits bill. The Tories were planning to cut back on the benefits bill, weren't they, if they won power? They didn't. What will Labour do about that bill, and how big is it?
It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So in 2023... And by the way, numbers are very difficult for people to get their heads from, right? I don't know how I would spend £1 billion, right? But the benefits bill, the whole welfare budget from the Department for Work and Pensions for last year was about over £285 billion. Right. The idea that isn't enough to look after lots of people, the idea that isn't absurdly generous.
It includes pensions, don't forget.
It includes pensions as well, but the universal credit bill itself was something like £80 billion.
Well, the smaller number here for the spending on incapacity and disability benefits will be £63 billion within 6 years by the end of this government.
Right, extraordinarily high. So this idea that the government are using anti-welfare rhetoric, the last government, I mean, I just think this is absurd. And the fact that you've then got the Secretary for Work and Pensions saying the last Parliament was the worst for economic inactivity on record. Why do you think that might be? Was it because everybody was locked in their homes and put on furlough for a couple of years through COVID? It's that kind of mendacity, let's not call it lying, that gets in the way of policy.
I mean, the real challenge for Labour is dealing with the welfare bill, because spending money on support of unions, members of that is OK, but this is much harder for them.
Exactly. And the problem is, of course, it's the natural idea that if you give out money to people, it's very, very hard ever to take it away again, because people start to feel they've earned it. They pay money in taxes and they feel, sadly sometimes wrongly, that having paid into something all their life, they're entitled to get it back. The numbers don't quite work like that, and that's why, again, these things are so complicated.
This month has been dominated by people being imprisoned for the riots. Lots of arrests, over 1,000 arrests, I think half that number being charged. Page 15 of the Sunday Times talks about from online post to prison, James.
Yeah, it's a really tricky issue. It's a good piece by Will Lloyd. This is a really tricky one. You've got the idea that free speech is completely sacrosanct. I think that's really, really important. I don't like it when people say mean, nasty things, but you should be able to do that in a free society, because maybe those mean, nasty things are useful. The difficulty is, of course, when mean and nasty becomes illegal. Now, I don't think anyone really is a kind of free speech absolutist. I don't think, the old example is you screaming fire in a crowded theatre, leading to a stampede that causes deaths, or shouting, hey, we don't like that guy over there, let's all go and kill him. Obviously, speech like that shouldn't be allowed. But when you have these new offences coming in for people saying stupid, nasty, maybe racist, whatever things on the internet...
And swift justice too. I mean, are you comfortable with this, James?
I think I'm very comfortable with the swift justice for people who've been rioting in the streets and attacking hotels and things like that. I'm fairly comfortable with people saying stupid stuff online because you should be smart enough not to. But should
they be jailed? You got the Facebook lady in.
I think that we have so many suspended sentences for people who do violent acts, people who are let out on suspended sentences, that putting an idiot who tweets something stupid straight into prison to encourage other people, whilst you're being so lenient in every other walk of life, seemingly with violent criminals, that seems wrong to me.
This article starts with Julie Sweeney. Doesn't look like a thug,
right.
But she's off to prison for some remarks there. So
right, and there are enough prison spaces. There are always 500 or so kept behind for emergencies like this. That was the last Conservative government. People like Ed Arger, the Prisons Minister, who did that. That was really important. But as you see these people who had dozens and dozens and dozens of violent convictions for rape and burglary, all these things, getting let out early or not going to prison as they should, and then you see some idiot going to prison for tweeting something stupid. But you can understand why people think that's a bit of two-tier justice.
OK. Now, page 1 of the Sunday Telegraph. Clapping for the NHS is like a national religion is dangerous, says Watchdog.
I think this is a fantastic thing that this woman has said. Rebecca Hilsenrath is very, very, very brave, as I know to my own detriment, to ever criticise the NHS. This idea that it is a national religion, I think it was...
Well, she calls it a national religion.
I think it was former Chancellor Nigel Lawson who said that the NHS was the closest thing Britain had to a national religion.
Because we all subscribe to it, is the idea.
Right. And I think it's completely dangerous. You try going on Twitter, talk about saying things on Twitter or Facebook or down the pub and criticising the NHS, even though we have worse cancer survival rates than lots of Central Europe and more avoidable deaths, and everybody now has had a bad experience in there. This is not to criticise the doctors, it's not to criticise the nurses, not to criticise the people who clean it or anything like that. But the system fundamentally has so many flaws in it that if we don't talk about that, we're never going to get it better and patients will suffer.
We should say who Rachel Hilsenrath is. She is the Health Ombudsman. Yeah. So she's saying things here which the Tories will be pilloried for. Yes. But she's almost making ground for allowing people to be criticise the NHS.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that to give some credit to Labour, Wes Streeting seems that he gets it. I think this is a chap who's very ambitious, and he realises that if he can go and actually make some reforms, maybe it's only Labour who can make reforms to the NHS. That idea that it was only Richard Nixon who could go to China back in the 70s. If he can make some of these reforms, great.
It might be good for us all.
Well, exactly. And people might go, well, but you just want the American system where people... No. The American system is the only one in the developed world that's more dysfunctional than ours. You never hear people criticising European healthcare systems, even as they try and get us to copy so many other European things.
Now, James, just finally, The Observer, page 5. Here comes the bride, the strains of Bridgerton's classical spin on pop. It's about getting married, James.
It is indeed. And as you say, very kindly, I popped the question on Friday afternoon.
She said yes?
She did. That was the best bit of it all. To Ali, she's not in politics, which is even better.
Yes,
the normal
that's healthy,
with a job, definitely right.
This article is about the kind of music you can have in weddings.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm foolish enough to think that I'm going to be playing the leading role in organising my own wedding. I think I'll leave that up to Ali. I like this idea here, though, that you can match up the traditional bridal march with Earth, Wind and Fire's 1978 hit September.
Just on screen there's a picture of a very happy young lady with you, James. I'm assuming that's your fiancée.
Absolutely right. Look at her. Isn't she beautiful?
But the idea of reworking weddings is increasingly a big thing now. It's a huge industry. You'll be finding shortly, by the way.
I know. Goodness me, it's going to be scary, isn't it? I think that we'll go as classic as possible. But it's a big day for people, and the amount of money that people are spending on them now, so I'm about to start discovering.
What song would you like turned into strings for your wedding, James?
Blimey, I think I'll have to go some kind of classical hymns and something like that.
Yes.
But if I can think of a funny pop song, it's not going to be Lady Gaga or Taylor Swift, I'm afraid.
OK. Look, James Price, congratulations from all our viewers here at GB News and all our colleagues here. And, stay around. Maybe we can come to you later. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Now, coming up next, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, will be joining us live. Stay tuned.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Bad news for Liberal mothers who want to score virtue points by transitioning their kids, Lewis.
You know, this
tell us what it is.
Is a California dad is granted full custody of 4-year-old son after boy's mom tried to raise the child non-binary.
It's almost like cult-like behaviour. You've got the mother transitioning and then the transitioning the son as well. It's interesting that, you know, it's almost like a religion. You get, you know, if you're a Christian, your kids are probably going to be Christian. If you're, you know, Hindu, your kids are probably going to be Hindu. And if you're transgender, your kids are probably going to be transgender.
There's absolutely a causation there. We see plenty of times in videos. This is exactly it. Like, and also we see the children of celebrities and people in particularly sort of liberal environments. It doesn't happen in some village in Indonesia or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's no such thing as a trans child. There's no such thing as non-binary. What there is are people with mental health issues and parents who want a virtual signal and also want to brainwash their children. This is an egregious example of that, where she was basically taking him to Disneyland, but he couldn't get on a ride unless he wore princess shoes. I mean, really evil, horrible stuff. You know, forced to wear a dress on his birthday. You know, just really nasty stuff. Now, here's the thing. You talk about the court going to him. No, that's not what happened. He took 800 pages of documentary evidence. He took 8 hours of police body camera footage showing this mental behaviour from the mother. And guess what? The courts ruled that the mum got him. They ruled against him. The only reason that he got custody of his child is because, thank God, a child protective services officer randomly got involved, looked into it themselves, and that's how he eventually got custody of the child. So the courts in America are utterly captured.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. You're watching the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. I'm delighted now to be joined by the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice. Richard, welcome to the programme.
Very good morning to you. Beautiful sunny day.
A beautiful day. It's been a busy week in August in politics, Richard Tice. Do you think all of the 6 candidates were right to say they wouldn't do any deals with you or Nigel Farage this week?
Oh, look, I mean, they're all, frankly, desperate in their own sort of sweet way. I think, frankly, no one's really interested in what's going on in the Tory party. They got annihilated in the election. They seem completely invisible. We're the only people that are actually talking about immigration. Priti Patel seems to have completely given up on it. She's proud of her record of emboldening mass immigration between 2021 until now, and she won't even leave the ECHR. These are things about which actually the majority of the British people, I think, are settled. And so I just think they're out of touch. And the real issue, Chris, is what the Labour Party is doing with taxpayers' cash. We're now on a sort of an escalator ever upwards of union demands for ever bigger pay rises, and that's going to be a catastrophe for the UK's finances, and we're going to pay.
What would you do, Richard? What would you do? Would you not honour the pay review bodies? That's the 5.5%. The biggest number was the 5.5% pay rise, £10 billion cost. What would you do if you were in power?
It's very simple. What you do in the private sector when you talk about pay rises above inflation, you say, well, there's got to be some productivity improvements. There's got to be some performance-related element to it. And it works in the private sector. You get growth, and that's what we need. We need some productivity and we need some performance in the public sector. The truth is that as the wage bill goes up, as the number of people working in the public sector goes up, productivity is collapsing. And it is sending our taxes to 70-year highs, and yet what works out there? The truth is almost nothing does work, and you're seeing a sort of a never-ending sort of leapfrog process between the unions in the public sector to get ever higher pay rises. And this will be this is a serious early warning sign for everybody. It's a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year of reckoning, frankly.
But what you're happening here, though, is the Tory party is saying it can't work with you. Don't you think you need to find some common cause with them to take on Labour?
Well, look, the reality is that we did so well in the election because we set out common sense policies about making work pay by lifting the income tax threshold to £20,000, about freezing immigration so that, again, you make work pay, you ease pressure on housing, on healthcare and these things. And the Tory party, they're not interested in any of that. They don't seem to want to control immigration at all. And so at the moment, I'm sort of wondering, well, what do we have in common with them? And I think the answer is maybe less than people think. And do you know what? Competition's a good thing. It's supposed to be a fundamental part of the philosophy of conservatism. But it's something that the Tory leadership have completely abandoned. They don't own the right to be the alternative to Labour. They don't own the philosophy of conservatism. So if they don't perform, guess what? Someone's going to come up and eat their lunch. That's how competition works. It's a very good thing. And we're very focused at Reform on the May elections next year and growing the party, as you've heard from Nigel and our chairman Zia, taking it to the next stage. And yeah, we're very excited.
Yeah. Richard Tice, you mentioned pay there, and I've got to ask you about the extra earnings earned by Nigel Farage from his media commitments, $1.2 million a year. Are you comfortable with your leader earning so much more, which doesn't rely on him being an MP?
Well, what it shows, actually, is that he has very strong appeal to huge numbers of people, and in a sense, that's one of the reasons why he secured so many votes. He's very well known. He's a very strong celebrity in his own right, and that has a value. And I come back to what I previously said. You know, competition is a good thing. People performing, working very hard, earning things. We should aspire to that. We want more of that. Ironically, of course, it was the Labour Party 20 years ago that was comfortable with that. But now we've sort of ended up in this ridiculous state of affairs where if you earn more than X, people sort of view it as, well, that's a bad thing. Maybe actually we need to create some growth, some hard work, some aspiration, some motivation, because that's the thing missing in this economy.
Even with you, though, Richard, you got four directorships, a partnership. You get £40,000 from a job that doesn't involve being an MP. Are you focused on the job?
Hey, guess what? What that means is I'm in touch with the reality. I'm out there in the real world, helping, understanding, working hard. And do you know what? If you want something doing, give it to a busy person. Get some growth, get some action. I tell you what, if you talk to the constituents of Boston and Skegness, they've seen more of me in the last 4 weeks than I think they saw of their predecessor in 9 years. They've heard. Are you there a lot?
Did you live there? Are you there a lot?
I'm there every week. I've just found the property to live there in the constituency, which is great. And so, yeah, we're fully on and making some great contacts. And yesterday I was at a family event in the constituency in a wonderful town hall of Curtin. So, yeah, we're busy. We're getting stuck in. And I think that's it. But equally, having a second or a third job, it actually helps sometimes understanding what's going on, whether it's in healthcare, real estate, media. You've got to know what's going on out there.
Richard, but your colleague Rupert Lowe has given his MP salary to charity, he says. Why shouldn't Nigel Farage do the same?
Well, those are individual matters for individuals. That's, again, individual responsibility is a philosophy of conservatism, believing in that. And that's a great thing. And And that's fantastic for what Rupert's done there. And I know he's working very hard in his constituency too. But, fundamentally, I tell you what, I think the constituents of the 5 constituencies where we've got MPs, I think they'll see more action, more oomph, more challenge to the respective parts of the public sector to make sure stuff gets done, action happens, and we create some growth. And that's what we've got to do, because without growth in those constituencies and around this country, we are heading to a very, very bad place. And if we don't grow, we're heading towards bankruptcy.
Yeah. Richard Tice, just quickly ask you about the claims of two-tiered justice. Are you comfortable with people being jailed for remarks on Facebook and Twitter, given the same kind of terms that are handed out to violent thugs?
No, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I've been one of the strongest critics of these policies. It seems that you can rape people and not go to jail, but if you put out a piece of information that you, in all seriousness, thought was genuine, it turns out to be incorrect. If you're from the right, then you get arrested. If you're from the left, from one of those sort of various organisations like Home Not Hate, you put out deliberate misinformation like Nick Lowes did, then he didn't even apologise for it. Talk about threatening acid being thrown over a woman. Absolutely appalling. We've got two-tier politics, two-tier policing and two-tier justice. And it's a very, very dangerous, slippery road to be going down. And
we've lost there Richard Tice. He's frozen. He got mid-flow there. But I think we've got the gist of what you're trying to say there. So thank you, Richard Tice. We'll be back in the next hour. Coming up, I'll be joined by the former Tory MP and ex-education minister, Robert Halfon. Back in 2. Stay tuned.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Northern Opera Group performs rare and wonderful operas in imaginative ways, enabling audiences and artists to discover new works and composers from across opera's history. The group produces the annual Leeds Opera Festival, which combines new productions of rare operas with a wide range of talks, panel discussions, workshops and other events. 2024 marks the festival's 8th season, and it's set to offer the world a premiere of Northern Opera Group's latest commission, Sherlock Holmes and the Sign of 4, an interpretation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle 19th century mystery novel. It's the first ever opera adaptation of the enigmatic detective. The artistic director of the Northern Opera Group, David Ward, joins me now to tell us more. David, welcome to GB News. If this is the first time that Sherlock Holmes has been translated into opera, I'm imagining that may mean that it's quite difficult to do. Is that so?
It's certainly a creative challenge, yes, and we knew that when we started on the project. I mean, as you'll know, opera traditionally has been slower-paced stories, ones that relied on less kind of narrative drive and action. So our first challenge was actually how do we translate this kind of story into opera? So it's been about looking at that musical language we use, the theatrical language, and I very much hope that we have been able to find a solution to do that. Well, it first started in 2020 when we all had a lot of time on our hands, and I finally picked up the Sherlock Holmes novels to have a read. And as I was reading them, it just struck me that these could make a fantastic opera, as well as those great theatrical set pieces. You know, you've also got a wonderful kind of cast of characters that you could have on stage. I also got really interested in this idea of how do you use music to show Sherlock's internal world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. So much more to come in the next hour. I'll be joined by the former Tory MP and Education Minister Robert Halfon. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Chris, thank you very much indeed, and good morning to you. Just after 10 o'clock, the top story from the newsroom this morning: Israeli airstrikes have killed dozens of people in Gaza and in Lebanon, while Hezbollah has responded by firing 55 rockets into northern Israel. World leaders have been urging restraint while ceasefire negotiations with Hamas continue. The Israeli Prime Minister has hinted those talks are, he says, heading in a positive direction, while his office has added that a joint proposal from the US, Egypt and Qatar do have components they say are acceptable to Israel. But the militant group claims there's been no progress in reaching a deal that would mean the release of hostages. Meanwhile, President Biden's claiming he is still optimistic that an agreement is closer than ever. Safety at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in Ukraine is deteriorating, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's after an explosion just outside the site's protected area, although no casualties have been reported. The facility, the largest of its kind in Europe, has been occupied by Russian soldiers since the early stages of the war there. Meanwhile, President Zelensky is claiming Kyiv's military position in the Kursk region is being strengthened. Here, the Home Secretary's announced a new crackdown on extremism, pledging to tackle harmful ideologies and address gaps in current policies. The Home Office is launching a rapid sprint to analyse and recommend strategies for countering extremist threats, including rising radicalisation among youth online. The initiative follows violent riots across England after the Southport stabbings now a few weeks ago, with so far over 460 people appearing in court, including more than 70 minors. Yvette Cooper says the new approach will target a spectrum of extremist ideologies. A manhunt has been launched for a convicted murderer on the run in Northern Ireland. David McCord was in custody in one of the prisons in North Belfast before disappearing on Friday. The 54-year-old is currently serving a life sentence for reportedly killing his girlfriend in 2003. A biotech firm that produces an Mpox vaccine is ramping up production after a new strain was found in Europe. The clade 1b strain has been confirmed in Sweden after first being detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is believed to be the most dangerous version of the disease so far found. Around 30 people have been left injured after two Ferris wheels were caught on fire at a music festival in Germany. You can see here on the screen pictures showing that ride in flames at Highfield Festival in Leipzig. Festival organisers say 18 people are currently being treated in hospital following that blaze, though the cause of the fire at this stage is not yet known. Well, the European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft will perform a world-first lunar Earth flyby tomorrow, marking a critical point in its journey to Jupiter. The manoeuvre will use the moon's gravity and then the Earth as a natural brake before slingshotting JUICE towards Venus, saving significant fuel. The high-risk operation, guided by specialist flight controllers back here on Earth, could determine the mission's success, although even a minor error would potentially end the mission. JUICE is, of course, equipped with UK-developed instruments and is on a 4.1 billion-mile trip to explore Jupiter's moons. Some sport for you, and Keely Hodgkinson is eyeing history after clinching gold at the 800 metres in Paris. Now she's setting her sights on smashing the 40-year-old world record in the 800 metres. The 22-year-old says her recent performance in London, where she ran less than a second over, has fuelled her confidence. She's not slowing down, though, with Hodgkinson on set to compete until September, chasing a third Diamond League title before a much-needed break.
it's been a long time before anyone's even hit the 53, seconds. So I'd love to do that. I think I can. I now believe I can do that, and I think now with the science that we have in the sport and the technology that we have that's up and coming, I think we should welcome it, and that's what's helping us get near to these records. And yeah, I'm all for it. So I'd love to see how close I can get to it.
And finally, some news from the world of film. French actor Alain Delon has died at the age of 88. He hadn't been well since his stroke in 2019. That was the year of his last major appearance when he received an honour at the Cannes Film Festival. The star was sometimes referred to as a French Frank Sinatra and was best known for films including Purple Noon and Les Samurai. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Back now to Chris.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. Lots more still to come. In just one moment, I'll be joined by the former Minister of State for Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education, Robert Halsall, as thousands of students receive their grades this week for their GCSEs. What does he make of those? I'll also be joined by the author of a new book, Alan Halsall, a Brexit campaigner who came under police investigation after being referred by the Electoral Commission. Are we closer than ever to a peace deal in Gaza as well? And what should we make of reports of UK tanks being used in Ukraine's recent incursion into Russian soil? Defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, will be here with us too, giving us the latest. And I'll be joined by the general manager of the Southport Flower Show, which this weekend is celebrating its 100th year, bringing some light into the area following a very difficult time in Southport after the recent tragic events. I'm joined now by the former Tory Minister of State for Skills, Apprenticeships and Higher Education, as well as the former Conservative Deputy Chairman, Robert Halfon. Robert, great to see you here on GB News. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Just very briefly, in today's Sunday Times, Sir David Bean from the Office for Students said that the golden age of education is over. Is he right?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I think that we should actually praise the fact that we've got more students than ever before going to university, that disadvantaged students are well over 70% more likely to go to standard in reading in the Western world. We've created, under the previous Conservative government, over 5.8 million apprenticeships since 2010. We've got a huge skills programme. So I think there is, of course, there are problems, but there's a lot to celebrate in our education system. It's something that we should be rightly proud of.
You're a former Tory MP now, but you're well involved in education. You chaired the Education Select Committee. What do you take of concerns about universities and whether they can stay in business, frankly? Some might go bust and some may have to merge with bigger ones.
Well, of course, it's difficult for some universities, but what I think we should recognise is that the higher education system as a whole, if you include the subsidies from the government or the taxpayer, if you include the student loans, if you include the research grant, their own private income plus international students, they get about £40 billion a year. Now, that is quite a huge sum of money, and it pales into comparison if you look at the money the FE sector gets, which is hugely transformative and ensures that many disadvantaged students can climb the ladder of opportunity. So, of course, there are problems. But what I think is that before we decide how we fund universities, there should be a royal commission or a big inquiry to look at what is university going to look like over the next 50, 100 years, because there are huge challenges coming down the line in terms of degree apprenticeships, the Office for Students regulation, the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence, the lifelong learning entitlement, which will change the way adults do higher education, because they won't have to stay there at a university for 3 years. They'll be able to do short courses at a time of their choosing. So it's huge challenges. So let's work out what the challenges are and then work out how to pay for them.
Is it almost certain, do you think, that student fees might have to go up in this Labour government?
Well, I hope not. I don't think there's any justification for raising tuition fees, and it will mean that less disadvantaged people apply to university. I think there needs to be more specialisation amongst universities. If universities have to merge, that I think might happen. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But as I say, I think what we need to do is to work out what are the challenges, what should the university system look like, and then decide how to pay for it. At the moment, university is not that much different from when I was at university about 30 years ago. And in some ways, the universities are still operating in a black cub world when the rest of the world has moved to Uber. And so what I think we need to do, as I say, is have that inquiry, whether it's a Royal Commission or whatever it may be, and then work out how to pay for it. But increasing tuition fees, in my view, is not the answer to this.
Yeah, Robert, just looking into this is a big exam weekend, isn't it? A-levels just gone Thursday, this coming Thursday, GCSEs. Do you think there should be more allowance given to students who had their education disrupted by the issue of weakened concrete, the so-called rack concrete, at the start of the academic year?
Well, I think that's a very difficult issue. I think it should be judged on a case-by-case basis, because in some schools, they were able to move to alternate classrooms and carry on learning as normal. But where there has been significant disruption, or if students' courses have not, have been disrupted while they've been learning, preparing for the exam, then absolutely, I think there needs to be some consideration taken by the exam regulators.
And moving on, if I may, Robert Halfon, you're one of the, I can say, having observed politics for 20 years, the founders of blue-collar conservatism, with your campaigning on fuel duty and the like over the past decade before you stood down as an MP just last month. What's your take on blue-collar Tories? That kind of constituency has disappeared now post that Labour landslide, and how can this party rebuild it and start speaking again to those communities?
Well, we need to be the party of workers. I've always felt that, we'd be called the Conservative Workers' Party, and that would be supporting lower tax for lower earners. It would be focusing relentlessly on cutting the cost of living for millions of people around the country. It would focus on things like, dealing with the waiting lists at GP surgeries. This is not rocket science. It's day-to-day issues that affect ordinary folk up and down the land, and we have to speak to those people. We also have to regain the public's trust. I mean, trust is the most important political commodity in politics, and at the moment the public don't trust the Conservatives. So we have to, before setting out a series of policies, is show them that we can rebuild trust, that we're credible, that we're a party free of scandal, free of squabbling, and then we can take the next steps in terms of working out what policies we should present at the next election.
Would you have a new logo for your Conservative Workers' Party? Currently, it's an oak tree.
Well, I've always thought the oak tree was, didn't really represent anything, and most people don't understand what it looks like, let alone what it represents. What I want for our party is our symbol to be a ladder, because if anything conservatism stands for, it's the ladder of opportunity, and my ladder would have hands round it, because we bring people to the ladder. We help people climb rung by rung. We're the party of aspiration, achievement, opportunity, and community. And I think that our party symbol should be the ladder of opportunity. And I think symbolism is incredibly important, as is language and communication. And we need to get those things right before we start having detailed policy discussions about what should be on our platform or in the manifesto.
And you're backing Mel Stride for leader, unshell the Mel, as they say in Tory circles?
Yeah, I realise that he is the underdog, but there's the old Mark Twain saying, it's not the size of the dog, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And the reason why I mentioned to you trust, there's two big problems. One, we've lost the trust of the public, and that is a huge problem, because if the public just don't trust us, they're going to either vote Reform or Liberal or Labour, and millions of people voted, sadly, former Conservative voters either stayed at home or voted for those parties. And the second problem with trust is that our party activists on the ground they've lost trust with the centre. They didn't see it as the Conservative Party as a meritocratic party. They felt that we were a party of cronyism, putting favoured people into plum constituency seats to stand at the election, for example. They don't believe that the party is democratic. So on those two trust issues with the public and the members with the party, I think that Mel Stride does, because he comes over as a conviction politician, but is affable, is likeable, and is trusted. I think he's well placed to lead our party. And he did a lot as welfare secretary, cutting billions of pounds of waste in order to try and get people back into work. And I think he's the right person because he's affable. And we need to be seen as a likeable party again. But he is a conviction politician as well.
Can I ask you about Nigel Farage and his outside earnings? What's your take on outside earnings? I don't remember yours ever making the headlines. He's on hundreds of thousands of pounds a year from work not as an MP. Is it time he handed his MP's pay back?
Well, I mean, just putting Nigel Farage aside for a moment, I don't have a problem with MPs having outside earnings as long as they do a brilliant job in their local area and looking after their constituents. And that means answering emails, it means holding regular constituency surgeries, it means going to regular community events, something I tried to do in my 14 years as a Member of Parliament. So as long as MPs are doing that, and they'll be judged at the election, That's why we have elections, because not just the national party is judged, but also the performance of the local MP is judged. But I think, I have no problem with MPs having outside earnings as long as they spend a significant time looking after their constituents.
Well, Robert Halfon, is obviously an issue there for the people of Clacton at the next election, maybe. Thanks for joining us here on GB News today on Camilla Tominey's show. Just one moment, I'll be speaking to Alan Halsall, who's been hailed as a hero by the Vote Leave mastermind Dominic Cummings, who's got a book out setting out why. We're back in 2 minutes.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, parents should be given a £5,000 tax break to encourage them to have more children. That's according to a think tank called Onward.
Yes, their report suggests that the cost of parenthood is preventing couples from having as many children as they would like, and maybe actually stopping them from having a baby indeed at all. So with the birth rate at a record low, which is dangerous for our economy, isn't it? We are asking, should there be financial incentives to have children?
Let's talk to journalist Julie Cook and consultant Hilary Salt. Good to see you both. Julie, what do you think? I mean, should I be in effect, handing over my hard-earned money, in tax dollars at least, to couples so they can procreate?
I actually think it's a good idea, and I'm not a lefty by any stretch of the imagination, but we are in quite a critical time in terms of our population. Although our population is growing because of our ageing population, our birth rate is dangerously low. And according to the Lancet, I think we're going to be, I've got it written here, birth rate will drop to 1.38 by 2050 and 1.3 by 2100. And this is too low to sustain an ageing population. So although we've got lots of elderly now, that's how it is, we don't have enough babies being born. And a booming baby boom is actually a sign of a booming economy. And I think people are scared now because of the cost of living. We've had COVID, we've now got this crisis. Why would people have a baby now? It's a terrifying time. But if you gave them an incentive, it might well boost our population, our birth rate.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. I'm delighted to be joined now by Alan Halsall, the author of Last Man Standing, Memoirs from the Front Line of Brexit. Alan, it's great to see you here on GB News. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Can you briefly explain why you were involved with Vote Leave, just briefly, and what your job was there?
Well, basically, I got involved because I'd always been interested in the Brexit, the referendum argument. I'd always been interested in leaving the EU, and I got involved with Business for Britain in the first place with Matthew Elliott, and then eventually I was asked if I'd be interested in getting involved in Vote Leave, and that's exactly what I decided to do.
And your role there, you were that person, the kind of member of the public on the board of Vote Leave, weren't you? And you, I suppose you were in charge of how the money was being spent. But as soon as the vote finished, it unleashed a difficult time for you personally over the next 5 years.
Well, I had no idea when I took the job on, Chris, what was going to happen to me. You're absolutely right. I was in charge of ensuring, as a responsible person for Vote Leave, to ensure that we didn't overspend. I was in charge of making sure that the donations were correct. I was basically the financial man for Vote Leave. And as a volunteer, I had no idea what was unleashing to me after the referendum, when the Electoral Commission decided that on 3 or 4 different occasions, they should investigate myself and Vote Leave on the basis that we had overspent some overspent over the £7 million limit. Each time, the first 3 times they found there was nothing there. But then they brought in, they then managed to speak to some whistleblowers, and as a result of that, they decided that there was an issue, and in due course we were fined some money. Vote Leave were fined some money, and then I was amazed to find that I was a lead item on the Today programme after they'd announced the fine, and I was being reported to the Metropolitan Police for a criminal investigation, which actually horrified me.
So the Commission did find some wrongdoing. Some wrongdoing was found by the Commission.
Some wrongdoing was found by the Commission. We would like to have appealed. In fact, we wanted to appeal. But by this stage, we'd run out of money. I mean, people were not interested by 2 years after the referendum in supporting us. So, and the Electoral Commission refused our cost capping request, as did the court. So we said, can we have some cost caps so we wouldn't be held for enormous costs by the court? And the Electoral Commission refused to grant us that. And you have to remember that they, as a national body, were using probably the most expensive barrister in the country at the time, James Eadie. They were using incredibly expensive city lawyers. So we were in a position where we had to pay the fine rather than appeal because it was too expensive.
The Commission itself says that they opened the investigations based on evidence. It's right that potential electoral offences are properly investigated. Do you understand that, or do you think you were wrongly treated in this situation?
Well, I felt we were totally wrongly treated. We were never, ever given a chance to put our case to the Electoral Commission. This is what is really appalling. The Electoral Commission interviewed whistleblowers on 2 occasions. The Electoral Commission head of regulation, a girl called Louise Edwards, actually had a meeting with the whistleblowers and discussed a political media strategy with them as to whether we're going to go to Channel 4 News, The Guardian, the BBC, the New York Times. I mean, what is a director of regulation from the Electoral Commission doing discussing such political issues? And then when the chief executive of the Electoral Commission went on the radio, on Radio 4's Today programme at 7 o'clock when they announced that I was to be criminally investigated, she made a false allegation that we'd refused to be interviewed. She said we refused to be interviewed 5 times. And in reality, we hadn't refused to be interviewed at all. We'd actually agreed to be interviewed. Both a Vote Leave lawyer contacted the Electoral Commission and also a lawyer for senior members of the Vote Leave team. And the Director of Regulation actually admitted to that fact. So, to say that there was 5 refusal to interview was actually not correct at all.
What kind of lessons it taught you think, Alan Halsall? I mean, going back now, would you have been so willing to get involved in the Vote Leave campaign?
Well, that's a very important question, Chris, because I was a volunteer. And the point is, we have to have independent regulators. This was a quango set up by Tony Blair, but they have to be independent. They have to show independence, and the public have to trust them. I trusted them implicitly when I became the responsible person for Vote Leave. But why would anybody volunteer? Why would anybody volunteer at all to take on a role in another referendum when you can be persecuted so much? I mean, it was a horrendous time for 4 years. Every time I looked at my phone, I was waiting to find out if the police were going to take me to court. I was cautioned. I had to give I was made a statement under caution of 3 hours in a police station in London. None of this I expected when I volunteered to take on the role of responsible person for Vote Leave. Purely and simply, I was a volunteer. And I wrote the book to show to people actually what the Electoral Commission, how they behaved. The police, by the way, were impeccable. The police actually made allegations that the Electoral Commission hadn't even dealt with the evidence correctly. Well, of course they hadn't, because they hadn't interviewed anybody. They interview 3 whistleblowers. They take everything they say verbatim. They don't ask Vote Leave any questions at all. It was really, I can't tell you how awful it was for me personally, and it cost me an awful lot of money, and how awful it was for the senior people at Vote Leave. It was disgraceful.
The book's on screen now. It's called Last Man Standing, Memoirs on the Front Line of the Brexit Referendum. You mentioned there the personal toll on you, Alan Halsall. What has that been? How much money has it cost you? And has it cost you work or lost employment opportunities?
Well, no lost employment opportunities. 2 things it's cost me. One is actual financial money to employ my own lawyers and barristers. When the police started knocking on my door, I had to use, criminals, lawyer and barristers. And that wasn't cheap. It was hundreds of thousands of pounds. But more than that, it was my reputation. At 7 o'clock in the morning, listening to the Today programme, I suddenly found I was being told that I was the subject of a police investigation. I'd like to think that it was, for me personally, it was awful. It was a reputation stealer. And even to this day, I'm sure people think, well, he's guilty. He must be guilty. And it's been a very, very unpleasant time.
What would you advise Alan Halsall looking back now? You'd say, don't do it, Alan.
I would like, the reason I've written this book, the reason that I'm on with you today is I would like some changes to be made. I despair with quangos. We've had 12 new quangos, I understand, since the new government took over. I despair, because it's very hard. As a colleague of mine, John Moynihan, said, who judges the judges? Who does judge the judges? And when my opinion is, an Electoral Commission who, without any question, had, I would suggest, a Remain bias, I'll say no more than that, then it's very difficult to trust the Electoral Commission to act impartially. I've asked some questions of the Chief Executive. I haven't had any satisfactory response, no answers to those questions. That's all I'd like. I'd like to know that if there are going to be changes in the future, it's going to be easier to hold a body such as the Electoral Commission. Because if you think about it, they actually are one of the most serious bodies in the country looking after elections. They were only created 20 odd years ago. Surely, we can have some regulation to ensure that they are held to account.
Yeah, but the Commission itself says that since the referendum, it has sought to improve its processes to bring a greater focus to the impact of investigations to those directly involved. And that's reflected in its updated enforcement policy, because it really was a David and Goliath situation. But you mentioned Leave, Remain and that debate. Why did you think it was that? I mean, they would deny bias, the Electoral Commission, of course they would. But why do you think they were in favour of Remain?
Well, I don't know why they were in favour of Remain. Why I think they were was because, I mean, you look at what happened with the Remain campaign. You know, we instigated and we showed the Electoral Commission evidence from a book, All Out War, and we pointed out the way that the Remain group had set up last-minute campaigns to ensure they had money for extra money to spend. None of those were investigated in the same way that I was investigated and Vote Leave were investigated. As I said earlier, 4 investigations on the same matter. Hours of work required. It just didn't happen for the Remain camp. And also, I would ask the question, why did some 80 peers and MPs write to the police chasing for my prosecution? Why did people like Jennifer Jones MP? Why did people, in the Lords, why did Claire Lucas, Ben Bradshaw, why were they chasing and trying to put the police under real pressure to prosecute me?
Well, Alan Halsall, they're not here to defend themselves, but I think you've made your point there about what you've been through in the book. Your memoir of the issue of being last man standing, a memoir from the front line of Brexit is out now. Thanks again to Alan Halsall. Now, coming up next, I'll be joined by the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. What does he make of Joe Biden's declaration that a Gazan ceasefire is closer than ever? And the reported use of British tanks by Ukraine in its incursion into Russia. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another fine day in store for Sunday, drier for many with plenty of sunny spells around, although still quite breezy for Scotland with some showers here too. But for the bulk of the UK, lots of sunshine to start on Sunday, a couple of showers across the West Country, Northern England and Western Scotland through the morning. But by the time we head into the afternoon, those showers largely dying away and lots of sunshine and clearer skies than we've seen recently here. And generally a pretty good day across the board through Sunday. Temperatures into the low 20s, perhaps up to 25 close to London, and a little bit cooler and still feeling quite chilly with that strong westerly breeze across northwest Scotland. Then through the afternoon, we're going to see plenty of sunshine around, particularly for eastern Scotland. There should be lots of sunny spells here, but it will be feeling cool. Temperatures only into the mid-teens across western parts of Scotland, and with that breeze, it still will be feeling quite cool, especially over higher ground. Northern Ireland seeing a brighter afternoon and evening than yesterday, and there'll be plenty of sunshine across the board, and most places across the southern half of the UK will be dry through Sunday evening as well. So turning into clear spells overnight, and that'll be for much of the country, lots of clear skies, but we do start to see this frontal system arriving from the west, cloud beginning to push in, particularly for Northern Ireland, Scotland and into parts of the West Country and Wales, starting to see some drizzly conditions moving in for Monday morning. Cooler though ahead of this, temperatures only just holding up into double figures and quite cool in the countryside, likely to be into the single figures here as well. But a dry and bright start across the east of the country, very much an east-west split through Monday, and we're going to start to see thickening cloud arriving from the west, strengthening wind, particularly through the Irish Sea, where we could see gales by the time we get into the afternoon, and we'll see some strong winds and some heavy rain here too. Cool underneath that rain, but there still will be some warmth in that sunshine the further south you are.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. I'm joined now by the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Robert, thank you for coming to the studio. Great to see you again. The world's uncertain. There's risk of war happening and risk of war elsewhere. Let's look at Ukraine. What's your take on Ukraine? And is it a risk to the UK, the fact that there's reports that Challenger 2 tanks have been used to support Ukraine's incursion into Russia this week?
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised, and I should think that the self-propelled howitzers, the AS-90s, which the Brits more or less cleaned out their stock, which the Ukrainians happen to like very much, and they will be involved because they're highly mobile, and it's all about support. And they are using all the equipment they can bring to the party. I think it's quite a sales point, says he rather cynically, but that at least the Challenger 2 seem to work.
But this is British armaments being used to help with the invasion of Russian soil. How is that?
And a lot of stuff. I think that this is where Zelensky and Syrskyi, who's his general, have been clever. They've got to use the best of what they've got. And what is shaming for the West is they have shown how to adapt and innovate in a way that almost all those armies that have supplied, including the US and the UK, would find very difficult to do because there would be procurement cycles and there would be red tape, and then they would go back to whoever, and then you would get MPs bickering about whether they knew best, and then you'd get Newsnight involved in the thing, and The Economist, and there's so much backseat driving going on, and it's innovation, it's bodging it on a grand scale.
Should MPs be discussing the use of UK hardware in this way in the war? Because it has been previously on defence, hasn't it? Defending Ukraine is what we support.
And the £3 billion comes out of defence fundings. Of course they should. And of course there's a very big thing behind it, which is absolutely clear, and on my X feed, where you get some very, very bright people saying some interesting things, that actually US, UK, France and Germany, who are the real drivers in this, they haven't got a coherent strategy on Ukraine. It's saying, look, what can you do, Zelensky and Syrskyi, this year? You didn't quite deliver, and you said you would last year, and then we complained about it, and now we're complaining because you won't tell us this time.
Yes.
It's really quite a muddle. There are funds going in, and of course there's a deadline. And the deadline is November the 5th, November the 6th in the United States, because there will be a different stance from the White House, whoever wins the presidential.
So you think there might be more activity with the West support for Ukraine before those US presidential elections?
And this answers your point about Biden. Biden extraordinarily looks like a man in a big hurry. He wants a big win.
With legacy, his legacy now, isn't it?
And it happens actually to most presidents at the end of their last term. And this is his first term, but also his last term.
But big issues there. We saw those pictures of the Challenger 2 tanks. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, says the UK should be proud of our support of Ukraine. That's right, isn't it? I mean, we are proud of that. But it's how those weapons are used which could be tricky diplomatically.
I think you and I might end up on different sides here, because I think that I am very sceptical, should I say, in a tactical battle, which is what it is, not grand strategy. They're not going to advance on Moscow or whatever. It's very difficult to draw red lines, because we're looking so much at the ground war. We're seeing the PBI, the poor bloody infantry, trying to take ground. Yes. But what's really happening, which is so interesting, so important in this sector, is what is happening in the air and in cyberspace. And that's where it really does look at the Ukrainians have made a big breakthrough, because they've neutralised what the Russians were becoming very good at. They were very good at, for instance, tackling the American rocket artillery system called HIMARS. That has been working gangbusters by the look of it this time. And that's another point of controversy, because those HIMARS rockets will be firing into Russian territory. And I think that this is one of the Zelensky requests which is on the table for Macron, above all for Keir Starmer and for Giorgia Meloni,
from Italy,
please let us use your storm shadows in a tactical situation, because unless we can stop the bombers dropping these dreadful glide bombs, old-fashioned retooled cruise bombs, on big civilian populations, we're in real trouble.
And so far, the issue of Storm Shadow hasn't been resolved, was it? There was a debate at the NATO summit in Washington, where I was there for GB News, about whether Keir Starmer had said you can use them against Russia, and then I think the UK clarified that you couldn't.
I think this is the Del Boy school of tactics and strategy. Nudge, nudge, wink, say no more, squire. You know, you've got to make it work, because they've only got a limited stock of this. But by the way, that this kind of missile, which is quite old-fashioned technology, effective as we have discovered in Crimea. The better version is an American version, which they want, which is called the AGM-158, RMM. It's an air-launched again. And the other thing, by the way, as they come in slowly, not in great number, the F-16 aircraft, I think, is going to be quite incisive, if not decisive.
Just stepping back from the war in Ukraine, two years in, who's winning, do you think?
I think it's a slugfest, and nobody is winning in military terms, and that is why the ground is slowly eroding, not that it's affecting him domestically with Putin. Zelensky has shown himself astonishingly successful at surviving. How long he can survive, and it's a daily occupation with him. But such is the media operation. It's very interesting, Chris, to watch with Russia. It just will keep going. The pictures of Russians willingly to surrender to the Ukrainians in Kursk.
Conscripts,
completely untrained, a lot of them, by all accounts, and that must get through. There will be a drip feed there. This year, next year, it'll be, I think, by the spring, we'll be in a very different situation.
And it's a slugfest. It can go on for how long, do you think? Is it going to be several more years, or when do you see the end of the war?
Can I resort to military jargon and then translate very quickly? There's a thing called the culmination point, which is the planned point where you will go to a certain point and then stop and do other things. That's where the Ukrainians have got in Kursk, by the way. Or the culminating point, which is where you don't have the stuff. You're running out of ammunition. You're running out of manpower. Now, it looks as if the culminating point is going to be where they run out, is going to be reached by Ukraine before Russia. But Russia is exhausted. And although they're churning stuff off its old kit and their air force is not
So
working,
how long?
It's months. It's months.
You think it's months away from the end?
I will give you milestones. One was, as we go into the winter mud, have a look at that. Just see how much Ukraine can manage to hold on to and keep its infrastructure going. And then I think we'll be somewhere different with a new president by the early spring. But by that time, we will know more clearly what China is telling Russia.
Yes.
And Russia does not want this to... Beijing doesn't want it to be a pain in their back door.
Economically as much as anything else.
Absolutely.
Now, looking at Gaza very quickly, Joe Biden, the US president, you mentioned legacy, and he's suing for peace there. Will there be a peace deal? He's sounding optimistic.
There will be a peace sometime, but I think such is the way these things are done. It won't be in Biden's office. But then the problem with Netanyahu is that, curiously, although he's known one of them, Trump, he's got two complete unknowns of a Trump 2 presidency or a Harris-Volz presidency. Does he get out while he can? But he wants to keep going because the war keeps him going. But the Americans have been absolutely clear his war aims cannot be achieved. He cannot totally destroy Hamas. And Netanyahu, unfortunately, has this habit of saying yes, 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 but no, at the last minute. And you've got two very tricky personalities, politically speaking, because it really matters if Netanyahu says yes, and it really matters if Yahya Sinwar,
he's a leader of Hamas,
who designed the October 7th attack.
Because there's still the issue with Israeli hostages haven't yet been resolved. They're still being held, or as far as we know, being held.
That's why it's looking quite difficult. They're talking about, will there be a bridge solution, as they describe it? So we'll have an interim. Hostages come out, temporary ceasefire, But then who runs Gaza? Because the Israeli hardliners are saying we want nobody left in North Gaza now. Well, how are you going to manage that? And it is looking like, and I think most, this is what a lot of the demonstrations are about, not only the hostages, we do not want to occupy Gaza again.
And a change in the White House, who will that benefit? It's hard to know with Trump against Harris.
I think Netanyahu must worry about Harris.
The most. He'll worry the most of that change.
There's a former very much more successfully given credit to prosecutor. And he is as mad as anything about the ICC. That's why he wouldn't see David Lammy this week.
The UK Foreign Secretary.
So, yeah, I think that Netanyahu must be more worried about a Harris presidency.
Just finally, on UK defence, John Healey there, 2.5% of GDP is the target of this government. They won't say when they're going to get there on spending on defence. Of course, the Tory government had planned to get there by 2028, 2029. Are programmes being cut back now because of that lack of a commitment to 2.5% of GDP?
They're being told to do housekeeping savings yet again. But there is a fundamental cultural problem which nobody dares say because of the way the press you and I have worked for, from the Telegraph, The Economist, all the way through, is structured. It's the way Whitehall looks at defence. And the one who's in James Thurber's catbird seat, who's really running it, is the Treasury always. And I had a former senior member of the Treasury wider thing saying, oh, we don't like them leaking, the chief leaking to the Daily Telegraph. There's something that seems to me that, that there's an element in the Whitehall culture that doesn't get defence and security, least of all in the cyber and cyber era, because the big shock, which unites this, says that what the Friday surprise could be something like the Houthis coming up and really knocking a hole in the whole concept of civil, commercial, maritime activity.
So as things stand, programmes are being cut. How much is being cut in year from programmes because of the Labour's?
The alarm bells rang when they said, "Can you save $1 billion to the army alone?" If this really was an instruction, that's why I think there's slightly a mythical element to it. That is simply nonsense. And if the Treasury really thought they could do it, and if Sue Gray really thought they could do it, again, Whitehall culture, they really do not know what they're dealing with. And the problem with defence, the whole structure of defence, the way it's run and financed, before you dish out a lot of money, has got to be reformed. But there are too many people involved, too many cooks, but they're all from inside the game. They're all from the Whitehall, let's be cautious, let's do this, instead of... And it's radical, sort of reformed British forces in the past, for the last 2 centuries.
And all hangs on this review being carried out in defence spending.
Yes, which is going to be extremely interesting because they've outsourced it to people not directly involved, which means they can ignore it if they don't like it.
There we are. Well, Robert Fox, do come back with more analysis on defence, and perhaps when that review comes out that time as well. Thank you for joining us today on Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Up next, I'll be joined by the General Manager of the Southport Flower Show, which this weekend is celebrating its centenary and bringing some light into the seaside town following a very, very difficult time after the recent tragic events.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Esther, can we talk about Andy Murray? Because Andy Murray has retired, which is great news. And in the papers today, his lovely wife, Kim, said, this is good, I'm glad he's retired, because he can do some childcare now and a bit of housework. But you know all about relationships. Yes. This is going to be an adjustment for them, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, as a father and a husband as well, Mark, that when you are at home, you are actually a big pain in the... Because you are kind of wired and you want to be doing stuff. And Andy Murray's like goal-driven. Can you imagine? He's going to be like, I'm going to make chili con carne. I'm going to make chili like this and this. And, you know, he's going to be like so focused and he's going to have so much energy. I would be terrified to live in the same house as Andy Murray. I know he kind of comes across as quite laid back, you know. He's a bit of a Sean Connery.
But actually, these people are driven, and that's not going to stop just because he's retired, right?
OK, when you've got a driven parent and the parent is at home, they're a nightmare. Yeah. So he needs to be seriously occupied. We've got to think of some hobbies.
Isn't it Kim's turn?
To have her career?
For her to be the most important person in the house.
I think she's quite into her art and painting and things like that.
So isn't it time for him to stay at home, you know, feed the kids and all that, empty the dishwasher, and let her career be the most important?
Although I doubt he'll do that. He'll have so much other stuff to do, punditry. Maybe he'll join his mum. She has a tennis academy.
Actually, I remember there's a documentary about both of them have a hotel in Scotland. Actually, I think they're co-run and I think they refurbished it.
Yeah.
To be fair, you know, Kim, you know, not just the hotel, but I'm sure she'll have other business ventures. You're right. I think it's the right thing to do. Clearly, you know, Andy Murray has had to be out the house. You know, probably she's had to look after the kids. I think anyone that's at the top of their game when they retire, I think the only fair thing to do is to, as you say, maybe take a step back and support your wife.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. I'm delighted to be joined now by Alan Adams, who's the General Manager at the Southport Flower Show. Alan, welcome to GB News. It's great to have you on. It's also a personal moment for me. My first job in journalism was at the Formby and Southport Globe. Then it became the Southport Champion, I think. If you know, are they still going, these newspapers, Alan?
Unfortunately, no, Chris. Champion went a couple of years ago, so we don't actually have any printed newspapers in the area at the moment.
But I know your flower show very well, and I know new people who would enter it and win awards. I mean, it's been a poignant time this time, the centenary of the flower show, but also what's happened recently in Southport has made flowers even more important.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. You know, it's been a horrendous time, obviously, here in Southport over recent weeks. But our thoughts, you know, from everybody here at the show, go to the families of those that we've lost and everybody who's been affected by recent terrible events.
Doing anything with the families? Have you asked? Because I think flowers can be supportive and can really make people feel better about a difficult time.
Well, they can. I mean, we've seen that with the tributes in the respective areas in town and certainly outside the town hall, where we've got some wonderful floral tributes. And really we've used a bit of that, certainly here at the show, because the show is all about flowers and about gardens. You know, we know that horticulture and flowers and being in your garden is good for your mind, body and soul. And, you know, we've used that to actually use it as a community feel and give somewhere people a place to come and rest and relax and enjoy themselves this weekend.
And I think you've got pink ribbons around the flower show too. That's to symbolise the atrocity and the community coming together.
Yes, indeed we do. Yeah, we're not recognising. You know, lots of different people and lots of traders, lots of exhibitors here are doing their own tributes to the show this year. But we felt the best tribute that we could do, Chris, to be honest, and actually carry on with the show. You know, what Southport needed most at the moment was actually that sense of community, a place to come and kind of try to take their mind away from recent events, without, of course, not forgetting those that we've lost and everybody again who's been affected by the incident.
And I should be asking, with that in mind, what have you on today? Well, why should people flock to the Southport Flower Show today?
Well, because we've got a great day out for all the family. We've got 19 show gardens, some that's been shown on the screen, which will amaze you, you know, and inspire you to actually create your gardens at home. We've got a wonderful floral arch, grand floral marquees with professional growers. We have entertainment. We've got CBBS Justin Fletcher here today. So if kids want to come along and watch that, we've got lots of entertainment for the kids. We have celebrity guests, we have cookery theatre, we have trade, we have food, we have drink. And also today at 4 o'clock at the Great Sell-Off, you've got a chance to grab yourself a bargain.
When you can walk away with some of the flowers and plants on display. And how's the weather?
The weather's not so bad. It's fair. I'd say bring a cardie, because it can be a little bit of a chill. But you know what, Chris, after Thursday, when unfortunately, we had a bit of a bad weather on Thursday, the crowds flocked here on Friday and Saturday, and they'll come again today. But it's just a great day out, great value, and just somewhere to come along and just put a smile on people's faces.
It's always bracing on the Southport coast. I remember vividly the wind can come off the Mersey quite strongly.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, but no, today's okay, really is. I'm just looking outside my window. I've been out in the park this morning, and it's great. Listen, just come along. The weather that we've had, obviously, this year hasn't been the best, but Southport today is absolutely fine. So come along to the show today.
Okay, and you can get in on the door, can you?
You certainly can, Chris, yeah. If you ask me nicely, I'm sure if you wanted to come up all the way from London, then by all means.
Look, Alan, thank you for joining us. Best of luck with the show today. And to all my guests, thank you very much. Camilla's back in a fortnight. Emily Carver is back here next week. But up next is my old friend, Michael Portillo. Thanks for joining us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another fine day in store for Sunday, drier for many with plenty of sunny spells around, although still quite breezy for Scotland with some showers here too. But for the bulk of the UK, lots of sunshine to start on Sunday, a couple of showers across the West Country, Northern England and Western Scotland through the morning. But by the time we head into the afternoon, those showers largely dying away and lots of sunshine and clearer skies than we've seen recently here. And generally a pretty good day across the board through Sunday. Temperatures into the low 20s, perhaps up to 25 close to London, and a little bit cooler and still feeling quite chilly with that strong westerly breeze across northwest Scotland. Then through the afternoon, we're going to see plenty of sunshine around, particularly for eastern Scotland. There should be lots of sunny spells here, but it will be feeling cool. Temperatures only into the mid-teens across western parts of Scotland, and with that breeze, it still will be feeling quite cool, especially over higher ground.